That black girl in the far left corner? That's me, Dalyla McGee. You are seeing some backstage and rehearsal footage from a production I was recently involved in called A Streetcar Named Desire. I'm a theater girl and I love it, but I want to bring you all into my world. So, I formally welcome you to the world of theater for at least the next 15 minutes. Yay! Woo! Cheers! I know you're all excited because we will be looking at theater and how the ancient form of media interacts with the modern day technology, aka new media, race, gender, and sexuality. And here to provide us expert insight will be our resident experts, Edith Frenney, playwright extraordinaire, Lisa Paulson, professional actress, director, and professor, Zaina, student director of Streetcar and actress, Troyzell, director, actor, and theater major. Now let's get to talking. Is theater old-fashioned?
I definitely do think theater's old-fashioned. I do think it was the original form of storytelling, back before we had even kind of like people who could read and write. That's how people learned, was through stories, and that's what theater is. It's just storytelling.
Is it dead yet?
No.
No, I agree. But why do you think it's not?
I guess we've been having this conversation about whether or not theater is dying since the beginning of the 20th century with the introduction of film and then later with the introduction of TV, and yet it hasn't. I just keep coming back to that there continue to be playwrights, there continue to be actors who train specifically to work on the stage, and there are audiences.
Not at all. I think theater is very much alive. I think it's living in other ways, kind of, and I think that the theatrical arts are changing, but I don't think that it's dying.
Why is theater still around?
I think there's something about live performance that intrigues people, and so it's very, very different than watching something in your living room. You're actually going to see people perform, so I think maybe there's some kind of mystic around that.
It's one of the most adaptable theater forms of art because it can be anything.
And you can do it anywhere.
And you can do it anywhere. You need a space, and you need people, and that's all. And you need a story that's compelling, and that's what you need.
Because it's personal, and it's immediate, and there's the atmosphere that lacks, like in a movie theater, when you just see somebody far away that you can't touch or really be there with them, and it's different seeing it live.
I think that this kind of multimedia approach that theater is going for, I think that's one of the ways in which it's staying alive, just kind of ebbing and flowing with the times, because as new media comes about, theater incorporating that kind of makes sure that audiences are engaged, especially when you have a digital age kind of audience.
So there's this thing that happens in theater, which is this real thing that happens between an audience and a performer in the room at a specific moment in time. That's a very special thing.
Technology in theater?
I've been thinking about projections a lot recently, and I think that the technology that exists is sometimes mind-blowingly amazing. What we're capable of doing and achieving in the theatrical space is sort of unbelievable. But at the same time, I've had people in production suggest projections as a workaround for maybe other more theatrical options when staging or producing a play. So I feel like the greater the technology, the more the closer theater will become to TV. And the danger is, how are we still doing something theatrical with all of this new technology?
It's cool. I think it adds to it. I think it keeps theater innovative and new. And I do think theater's old-fashioned, but I think just like any good, platform of art, it's constantly reinventing itself to fit in and to stay relevant.
I may be a purist, but I just feel like in the theater less is always more, and I would rather see somebody do something really, really creative with sort of physical elements of the theater as opposed to doing something to create a sense of reality. So I guess, if the technology is being used to create the theatricality, then great. If it's being used as a stand-in for theatricality, then I don't know how it really advances the art form.
But we can't lose sight of that there's got to be a compelling story, or there's got to be a compelling center to the event, and the technology is just there to help
Tell the story.
tell the story or communicate or connect with the audience.
There's something really nice about keeping things very simple in the theatrical space. And the more bells and whistles we add, the less simple it is, and the more, the more magic, the less magic. I don't know.
What about race?
There are just so many wonderful actors in the world, and a lot of the plays that are being produced were not written specifically for the sort of wide variety of people who exist on the planet. So, definitely if you're doing a classical play, if you're doing a play from the sort of 20th century canon, the sort of dead white male plays. First of all, if the playwright's dead, you should sort of be able to do whatever the heck you want with it. I say that as a playwright.
It's definitely a hard niche to get into if you are any minority, and even if you are a woman, just because the plays that are out there aren't as many for strong female leads in general as there are male leads, and then on top of that, there's not as many for minority leads, unless you just want to cast that's not like the way it's written in the play. So I think I've been fortunate so far with theater at Emory, though.
Race-blind casting?
There is no such thing, at least in our culture, of race-blind audiences, right? Like, if we come in, or gender, if we come into a room and we see somebody of a particular race or gender, we are bringing something into the room with us.
Right.
And I think theater artists have to be aware of that.
Actually, I don't think that race-blind casting is the thing, because people have their racial biases, and so you can try and be colorblind or race-blind, but it's like not really a thing. It's hard because there are some pieces that, like A Raisin in the Sun, it's about a black family, so that a director is probably looking for black people for that show. So yeah, I think it's hard. I think it's also tied up in like this idea about racism and not wanting to talk about racism and not talking about race, and so I think it's all baloney, to use a nicer word. So yeah, I'm not really here for it.
I think race-blind casting is awesome. I think that we should definitely look at who is the best character when casting versus, and I mean, it's difficult to say that because sometimes physical looks do play a role in the way a character is. And I think it comes down to also the playwrights, really, because they're who's creating the play. And it's up to the playwrights to create characters that are universal.
If I have written a play that in order to be told, in order for the story to be conveyed, I have written a character that, is specifically African American or is specifically white or specifically Latina, then I will want, in the world premiere of that and subsequent premieres of that play, I would want to cast somebody appropriate for the character. Because I've made a choice, right? I made a specific choice in that this story needs to be told in this particular way.
I think sometimes it is necessary for a certain character to be a certain ethnicity because it's the whole culture and it's the whole theme of the play. But I definitely think for certain plays that don't have that like underlying racial theme, like Raisin in the Sun, for example, that has like an underlying racial theme, so the characters have to be the ethnicity that it's written in the play. But I do think for like more ambiguous plays, it's awesome. And I do think we should be doing that more in society in general.
Like, we used to talk about colorblind casting, right? And now we've kind of moved past that, so that it's like about sort of color aware or race aware casting, so that we're not trying to pretend like the person's race isn't affecting the audience. Right.
Let's talk about gender.
It's a bit easier to find a diverse set of roles as a man. I think women sometimes generally get stuck in these same types of roles that keep being written for women. and of course there's always exceptions, but I think it's on the up and up. I do think it's becoming more equalized, but I do think just automatically there's already more roles for men to begin with in general.
We don't really talk about gender much, and we had a show last year that was all women, and for Colored Girls it's obviously all women, and so it's interesting the ways in which theater has become a very feminine art, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I think everyone should have the space to, be artistic or whatever and create. But yeah, I don't think we talk much about gender.
Theater at Emory even does cater more towards females, especially student theater. Last year they did 9 Parts of Desire, which was an all-female cast, and then next semester they're doing For Colored Girls, which will be another all-female cast.
Gender-blind casting.
Ooh. I think it's bold. I think it depends on the play. It changes the theme of the play. It changes what you want to say. So I'm totally for it, just depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So
Let's talk sexuality.
As a straight male actor, playing a gay character was no longer a brave move. Like, it wasn't something you should pat yourself on the back for doing, but not being able to play a gay character if you were a straight guy was totally cowardly. So, I mean, I don't know what that says about all of this, but I think that's, what Lisa's talking about is that the experience of loving somebody is something that we can all relate to.
I don't think we really touch on it in the theater community, which I kind of wish we did, because those are like important things to talk about.
I don't think there's as much theater that is, breaking sexuality norms, that has more than just, the heteronormal relationships in it. And that does talk about, not even just talk about, but is just comfortable in making something like a gay couple or a lesbian couple or someone who's transgender, making that like a normal thing versus making that the theme of the play about sexuality. Is just an aspect of the play. It's
the point where I think it was stereotypical at one point that if you were a male actor, you must be gay.
I feel like there are more people that I know of that are queer, homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, who are in the theater community, but I don't think that it really plays a big part in the way that we cultivate community.
But I also think, I think if you come into an audition, from my side of it, if you come into audition and you play the character, regardless of your sexuality, you're going to get the role that best fits who you are as that character, who you are as an actor.
This comes up in my classes quite a bit when I assign a scene to young students where there's a love scene, but it happens to not be a heterosexual love scene. And people get a little bit uncomfortable. And so it's really always a really wonderful conversation about, well, you're pretending to be in love with this person, right? I mean, it's all a pretense anyway. It's an illusion. So how is it different? Is it different in any way to be in love with somebody that's of your same sex than it is to be in love with somebody that's of a different sex? It really, when you're playing as an actor, the moment isn't any different, right? You just have to deal with your own, whatever you're bringing into it in terms of, but theater is trying to say everything human is part of what we're interested in exploring. And so we would be crazy to be ignoring or excluding anybody's experiences.
Yeah.
Well, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed your time here in the world of theater and take back some insights about how theater involves sexuality, gender, and race.